Welcome back, guys, to another video brought to you by your one and only literary pharaoh. I wanted to talk about Myron Gaines for a minute. Some of you guys may not know him. I would say look him up. You know, a lot of times you don't have to look up the people you like. You can look up the people you hate. His takes are strategic. I'm going to say that. And I don't think he's a racist. I don't think he's any of that, but he plays into that in order to elicit emotional responses from a lot of you guys who tend to want to delve into his content and then find a reason to berate him, chastise him, and call him whatever you want to call him. I understand what he's doing, maybe because I'm a much older man, and you could call me black, you could call me African American, you can call me whatever the hell you want. But first of all, my classification is not my race. I'm just a human being. But like Myron Gaines, I'm also from Africa. I'm from Nigeria. But I wasn't born in this, well, I was born in this country, but as a little baby, I went to Africa, I went to Nigeria, and I came back to the States when I was about 8-9 years old. So I have culture, I have a background, and life is based upon how I perceive life to be. I don't perceive life through the lens of this tribal rhetoric that a lot of people like to attach themselves to. And people think that because their skin is brown, black, African American, or whatever you want to call it, they have to think a certain way. And if your skin is white, you have to think a certain way. I've said this for a very long time, that social media has been weaponized against the human experience to wage a psychological warfare upon the minds of the people. And what they do is they use narratives, and they use stories, and they use race baiting narratives to draw us in. And why this is important is because it works. It's effective against non-thinking people. And you don't have to have two sides that are non-thinking. All you need is one side not to think. So if you pit black people against the white people, all you need is one part of the two, one part of the duo to be illogical. And once you have sown the seeds of insanity and you are being illogical and not using your left brain, what happens is that it causes a chaos into the frequency of life, into what we deem to be mathematical and what we deem to be logical, because life is mathematical and life is logical. We have to operate on things that make sense. So once things start to not make sense, it ends up inadvertently, not that it's done intentionally, it ends up giving attention to what doesn't make sense, because now we are spending our energy and time trying to recorrect it and rectify something that's been taken off of something that was supposed to be sane. We're supposed to be living sane lives, people, and using common sense. I'm saying all this because Myron Gaines plays into that. Because a lot of you, people that are brown skinned, black, African American, you look at him and say, well, his skin color is like mine, so he's supposed to think a certain way. And that's the error that we make initially, because we end up assuming that a person's skin color puts them in a certain mindset, or puts them in a certain category that fits into a worldview that you placed upon them. That's totally incorrect to do. You can't do that. Everyone has to be their own individual thinker. So when I hear Myron Gaines call black people monkeys and call black people the N-word, it doesn't bother me. It never bothered me, even before Myron Gaines existed in my conscience when I was younger. I never, maybe because even though I grew up in this culture, I never took on the fight of the white man is keeping me down narrative. I never took on that. I never wore that jacket. I never took on that mantra. I never agreed to those sentiments at all. Why? Because I'm my own person. Now, interesting enough, I'm the middle of three. I have an older sister, I'm the middle, and I have a younger brother. Ironically, my two other siblings don't think like me. They've bought into the race thing too. They've bought into the systemic racism and the white man. There's certain things that they do to keep black people down and this and that. I made a choice as an individual not to hinge my energy into that sort of frequency, because we have to understand that what we put our energy to, what we connect our souls to, or what we connect our frequency to, tends to dictate our reality. Now, am I saying that racism doesn't exist? I'll be an idiot to say that. But I'm also very logical to say that everyone is racist. Everyone. You say, how is that? Well, if you look up the term racist, and I'm not going to use what the dictionary term says, I'm going to apply the term racist as it applies to practical living. When I think of a racist, I think of people who have a deep-seated hate. Again, it has to have the undermarkings of hate. It has to be emboldened by the term hate. So, if you hate another race collectively, not a couple of people, not a couple of bad apples, if you lump a particular race of people into a category of hate based upon their skin color or based upon their genetic makeup, that to me is racism. That to me is racist. That's you making a decision based upon a person's genetic makeup or their phenotype or their skin hue, the pigmentation of their skin. That's a very ignorant position to take. Now, do we all have elements of racial tones in us? Yes, we do. We all do. You'll be lying if you don't. When I say racial tones, I mean things like racial profiling. There are certain things that quote-unquote African Americans or black people or brown people do. There are certain things that Indians do. There are certain things that Hispanics or Mexicans do. There are certain things that different races of people do. And if you categorically put those people into those classifications, that's called racial profiling, which is in the spectrum of racism, because you're using race as a factor to make a determination. Now, it doesn't mean that you hate the race. I think that the most egregious form of racism is when you actually abhor and you vehemently detest a specific race based upon genetic makeup. And to me, that's the most ignorant position to take. So I don't really give attention to people who are truly racist. So when I hear Myron Gaines speak, he's very intelligent, so I don't deem him to be a racist, even though he uses racist terms, but he's using those racist terms strategically to arouse the emotional response from people who are ignorant, from people who would rather function off of their amygdala. They're not incorporate their frontal cortex. They're not using logic and reasoning to address an issue. Most of them can't, probably because their frontal lobes haven't been fully developed. And even those who have their frontal lobe developed, they still find themselves immersed into that psychology that's been cultivated over years. See, when you've built yourself up in a certain way, it's hard to kind of detach yourself from what you've built. It's going to take just as much time to remove yourself from something that you've created. Sort of like the saying of, if you make the mess, you clean the mess. You make the bed, you lay in the bed. So if you've made up a certain worldview up in your mind, and you've created such a demoralizing psychological construct that impedes you from progressing, that impedes you from evolving, what that does is puts upon your psyche and your life a certain amount of stress to detach yourself from that worldview that you created. So there's no one at fault but you. So the reason why I don't take on those victimhood sentiments is because there are pockets of people in the world who love to stay in that. And I think that's a religion in and of itself. Religion is not just steeped into just Christianity, Judaism, being Muslim, or being Buddhist. Those are philosophies and religions, and you have dogmas, and you have certain doctrines that people follow in those specific religions of what we know religion to be. I'm here to say that having that victimhood mentality is a religion. When you assess current events from the lens of racial overtones, then your judgments are inevitably skewed, automatically skewed. You don't have a leg to stand on because your filter distorts logic, which removes you from being objective and being balanced. So it's never bothered me. I've never tried to ingratiate myself to people who hate me, especially if I know that they hate me. But to me, people are making assumptions. We've allowed social media and legacy media to dictate our thinking and to shape the trajectory in where we go with our thinking. Every white cop is not out there killing black people. Every white person is not hating black people, and every black person isn't hating white people. I think that life is hard enough that we don't need to insert racial barriers into our life. And these racial barriers, again, are formed as a psychological construct. I keep going back to the psychology because it's the psychology that shapes everything. Once the mind is lost, then the output is dictated by the construct of the mind. If you have fear, which is something that's of the mind, it's going to dictate your actions. All right? You're not going to make certain decisions because of fear. So if you have a worldview that the whole world is against you, or the white man is keeping you down, or there's something called systemic racism, then how can you operate objectively in life? You're always going to be operating from a lens of a victim. And that doesn't allow you to live to your optimal self. It doesn't. Because you already go in defeated. You already go in with the mentality that, well, I'm not going to get this because, well, they're going to look at me differently. You're going to be more defensive. You're going to be more on the offense. You're not going to be balanced. You're going to teeter on either extremes. You're going to be polarizing in your actions. You're not going to be even keel. It's going to be hard for you to make rational decisions and put forth a remedy or put forth an action plan to circumvent or go around any obstacle that's in front of you, because you already have a worldview that you're defeated anyway. So you settle. You become content. What I see Myron Gaines doing is genius, because people don't listen to you until you've aroused your emotions, and it's not an exercise in futility. I think that there's an end goal in mind here, in the things that he's doing, and he's gonna get to a particular stage in his life where he's gonna look back at what he's created and see that, you know what, as much as people have said hateful things about me, I've also done some good. See, doing good doesn't mean pacifying to everyone's needs, because everyone's needs aren't valid enough to be met. Not every need needs to be met. Some needs need to be ignored, especially when those needs are hinged on you being illogical and you being nonsensical and you being a person that's not making sense. So when he's calling black people monkeys and calling black people the N-word, he also calls white people monkeys and calls white people the N-words too. What he is doing is shattering the mold and using those. And he said this on his channel. He said this on one of his feeds, one of his podcasts. It was on one of his debriefs. He said something that, and I'm paraphrasing here, don't quote me, but I'm going to just put this together as best as I can. He said something to the effect of, since many of you get emotional about these terms, I'm going to use it intentionally to let you know that you're stupid, because when I use these terms, you guys all of a sudden lose common sense. You get so emotional that it's hard for you guys to use common sense and apply logic to any situation. And we always tell people that when you act off of emotion, it's more of an impulsive act. When you act off of emotion, emotion isn't bad, but you have to take the energy in motion, which is what emotion is. You have to take that energy that's in motion, and you have to harness that energy, think about it, and then ask yourself, how am I going to act and proceed with this energy and emotion? I often tell people that when you have a heightened sense of an emotion that overwhelms you, that overcomes you, the best thing to do is stay quiet and listen more. We're so quick to respond. We're so quick to have a response when we have an emotional, when we're stimulated emotionally, whether it's anger or sadness or wherever it is. They call, whether people are using race to rage bait you or whatever it is. And Myron does this to people. But if you can look past the words and look at what he's trying to tell you, he's helping people, but people won't see it that way. Oh, he's a sellout, he's a coon. Why? Because his skin is brown and he doesn't think like you? You see, the way to apply common sense and critical thinking to anything in life requires complexity, requires variations, and it doesn't work when you hinge everything on particular absolutes and say that, oh, because I am this skin color, I have to always think this way. That limits your scope. It doesn't allow you to be fluid in your thought process. It makes you a slave of your own worldview. And what we have to work at is trying to come out of that. We have to work on freeing ourselves from these tribal musings that we possess, these thoughts that we hold dear, and say that, oh, we have to think this way because I'm this. And when you've thought like that for so long, when you've harnessed that type of mentality for so long, it's hard for you to see anything clearly. And what that does, it allows politics, or what I call politricks, because politics is stupid. I don't even know why anybody pays attention to politics. I don't even know why the hell people vote, but to each its own. Then it allows politicians, i.e. the Democrats, or whatever they are, to come in and swoop in and use your emotion to override your logic to get you to make decisions based upon your emotion. Look, I've been in this country since I was 8-9 years old. I'm 45 years old. And I have seen things. I have seen white people, and most of the racist things that I've seen, I mean, not on television, not on news. Most of the things that I've seen has come from television and news, or me watching a movie about people who were racist, or me reading a book in the past about how white people were lynching black people. But I'm here to say this, that history is the victim. Since we want to talk about victimhoods, let's stay on the topic of being victims. History is a victim of revisionist history, meaning that history has been revised, and we can't even hinge our reality upon things that were written about history, because history is distorted. I don't believe everything in history. I don't believe everything that they talked about in World War II. I don't believe everything that they talked about with Hitler. I was saying this before Myron Gaines was saying this. Hitler is not the bad guy that you guys think that he is. I'm not here saying that he was a saint either. But I'm here to tell you guys that the narratives have been forged throughout history to create a particular reality for us that's based upon these false narratives, because it's false. Because once you distort the truth, once a truth becomes half-truth, then it's false. Truth has to be pure, right? That's what truth is. You can't half-ass truth. If once you half-ass it, then you might as well just throw it in the garbage and put it in the category of it being a lie or it being false. And we have many of those things in history. We have books written about this things happens to black, these things happen to blacks. And I'm not denying that everything that they said happened, but I'm also here to tell you that a lot of those stories are lies. The story of Harriet Tubman with the Underground Railroad is a lie. Harriet Tubman didn't even exist. Listen to Myron Gaines. Listen to Dane Calloway. Go to Dane Calloway's channel. And I'm endorsing these people because I'm subscribed to their channels. Listen to Dane Calloway. He's a He's an impeccable historian because he uses empirical data. He uses documentation. He doesn't just go off of what Google says. And you'll hear that the slave narrative, the Atlantic slave trade, was a total lie. It's debunked. It's not even true. So when we look back at what we call history, can we really even rely on it? History books are going to be written about how George Floyd was killed by a racist cop and how a bunch of black people were rioting in the streets, not knowing because of our ignorance that those black people who were rioting in the streets were part of an organization that were linked with Antifa, George Soros's group. See, these things, these are all propaganda. But as long as people have a camera rolling and you could put it out on the news, we automatically deem it to be factual just because the news is showing it. But I'm here to tell you that things are staged. Stage events happen all the time. Even the recent so-called alleged, assassination attempt on Donald Trump. All of them. Even the one that happened when the bullet allegedly grazed his ear. Those things are all staged. I know you won't believe me. Oh, but the news, why? What do you mean why? You don't have to know the why, but the why could fall into, there are a plethora of whys. It could be to, you think of the whys. That's what critical thinking is about. Why would they lie? Then you have to ask yourself, why would they tell the truth? What does the government gain from being factual and truthful? Nothing. They gain a lot by lying, because when you lie to people, it's a form of manipulation. You figure out the why for your damn self. I'm not going to give you that. If you think that everything that the news tells you and everything that the government conveys to the public is factual and it's the gospel and it's not flawed, it can't be a lie, then you're an idiot. They've been lying to us since the beginning of time. You can't even rely on history. You have to, like the saying goes, you believe nothing, you believe half of what you see and believe nothing that you hear. In my personal life, I have not experienced racism like that. And I've been in this country since I was 8, 9 years old. I'm 45 years old. The only experience of racism that I've experienced, or I wouldn't even call it experience, that I've seen is through Hollywood, through television, through news, through social media, of them showing a white cop shooting a black person, as if that's the only shooting that happened that day. Do you know how many cop shootings happen in the world daily? Do you know how many white cops are killing white people too? They don't air that. But the minute a white cop kills a black person, then it's all of a sudden aired on a continuous loop on television to brainwash our minds to think that this is something that's happening normally. We live in a diverse culture where there's a plethora of people, different kinds of people that stay in America. It's called a melting pot for a reason. So there will be times where a white cop kills a black person. There'll be times where a black cop kills a white person. It's just the law of averages. It's common freaking sense. The mixtures, we're gonna have entanglements with one another at times. I can get into an accident on the road, and I can get into an accident and get out of my car and be upset at the person who hit me. But if the person who hit me is a white person and I'm yelling, somebody could roll the camera and say, look at this racist black guy being a racist against this white person. You see how stupid we are? Once you become a person that only sees through the lens of race, that's the only thing that controls your thinking. Your entire framework, the construct, the way your mind frame is constructed is going to be based upon that filter. So that means that your logic is distorted, because you're not looking at people as human beings anymore. You're looking at people as racial elements to fit into a worldview that you already have. So you're going to look at life in a way to either continually feed your worldview to affirm what you think to be true, or you're going to purposely dispel or dismiss certain things because you don't want that to contend or combat or counter the erroneous worldview that you possess. We do this all the time. We're being biased. We're being implicitly biased, and sometimes we're being consciously biased. We dismiss things that are going to cause a counter to our position. It's going to be antithetical to the position that we hold. So we dismiss it because we don't want to contend with it. Because contending with that might cause us to renew our thinking and renew our minds. But a lot of us are too insecure to do that. Because we've been so attached to certain types of worldviews that to think that I have to unplug from this worldview and I feel like I'm going to be lost. So I'm going to stay comfortable and continue to look through life through that distorted lens. And I'm only going to look at things that fit, that espouses what I already believe, that feeds into what I already believe. And things that doesn't feed to what I already don't believe, I'm going to just dismiss it. That to me right there is the definition of ignorance, and willful ignorance at that. That means that you willfully are formulating a pattern of behavior that keeps you ignorant. We have to take in everything, folks, even if you hate it. That's why I prefaced this feed, this podcast. I said, even though you may not like Myron Gaines, listen to what he's saying. I know it hurts. Listen to what he's saying. No, look past the nigger terms. Look past the monkey terms. Look past the things that he calls Indians. He has a term for every race. He has a racial term for every race. So it's not even about a black thing. He's doing it intentionally to shatter that, to have us move beyond those emotional terms that causes divisions and tries to have us looking at things from a logical perspective. As long as we have those emotional overtones that influences our worldviews and influences the way we think about life, then we're always going to be behind the eight ball in the sense that we can never come to a resolution to anything. Emotions are real, people, and the mind is very strong. The mind. There was a video that I watched on YouTube. This guy was playing a prank on a person. There was this guy that was getting his hair cut, and the barber had fake blood. And the barber somehow put fake blood on the guy's neck and said, "Oh, I think I cut you." And the guy who was getting his haircut was like, "What do you mean you cut me?" He said, "Ooh, stay still, man. Stay still. Let me wipe it." So the barber is acting and panicking as if he cut the guy who was getting his haircut. The barber was acting like he really cut the guy. So the guy who was sitting down getting his haircut was like, "Whoa!" He starts to panic. Now, mind you, this is fake blood that he put on the guy's neck. And so, to make a long story short, anyway, the barber ends up taking like a paper towel and touching the guy's neck that he was cutting when he was shaving him. And he touched it and he showed him the fake blood. Immediately when the guy saw the fake blood, he began to say, it hurts. He began to say, it hurts, call the ambulance, call the cops. And it was a lot of fake blood. So this guy that's getting his haircut is thinking that he's probably bleeding out. He's like, damn. The point of this story why I'm telling you this is because though it was fake blood, because he believed it was real blood, in his mind, he believed that he was in pain. And so because he believed that he was in pain, he was in pain. Because he believed it. It's the same thing they do with placebos, right? When they give you a water pill, they tell you take this pill, you should feel better in a couple of weeks. Because you believe you're going to be better in a couple of weeks, you end up becoming better. But what they gave you was a fake pill. It was a placebo. There was nothing in the pill. The mind is very strong, people. If you believe something strong enough, it will derail you. Your reality is based upon your perception. So what Myron Gaines is endeavoring to do, what he's trying to do is remove those distortions, remove those emotional barriers and filters that distort your thinking, so you can at least have the capacity to see through a clear lens, right? To see through a clear lens to make better decisions. But if you're already looking through a lens of victimhood, no matter how well-intentioned you think you are, if that distortion obscures your vision from seeing clearly and from seeing objectively, then how can you say that you're making the best decision of your life? And when you already walk in with a vibration of people are keeping me down, well, if you think that the white man or the white system is keeping you down, you're going to stay down because you believe it, not because it's true. Your belief system is what makes something true. That's to let you know the God quality that we have, the little g God quality that we have as people. When the creator of the universe or whatever biblical story you believe into, or whatever religion you believe, or whatever you believe. I could care less. When the Bible says God created man in his image, if this God is a creator, or if you believe that God to be the ultimate creator of the universe, whoever you think God is, if you're created in the creator's image, that means you also have the ability to create. You have the ability to create, not with tangible items, not with things that you can actually conceptualize and take in the abstract, not the physical. We're talking about in the mind. And when you've created a worldview in your mind and you believe it strong enough, you've also created your reality, which is why there's so much division, because there are people out there that believe the racial religion is so strong that people live their lives based upon that, so much so that you see people fight in grocery stores based upon political rhetoric. I remember during the times when, a couple of years back, when Trump was going for office and the whole Biden and Trump thing was going on, you had Hispanics and white people fighting, you had Hispanics and blacks fighting. Like, it was crazy. But I would pull up to a grocery store and I would see, I heard this African American lady getting mad at this Hispanic lady, saying, "Go back to your country," or something like that, and saying, "Get out of here, you illegal immigrant." It was crazy. But most of these things are influenced by what people watch and what people see, and they see through that lens of distortion, and they take in the stories to further embellish and further bolster their erroneous form of thinking, and then they end up using that form of thinking to go out into the world, and it dictates their behavior, it dictates their actions, and it also dictates the kind of words that they use towards other people. So hate is perpetuated through legacy media and social media, but it's not done without our acceptance, meaning that it's not done against our will. You have to plug into these things. You have the ability to ignore a video. You have the ability to change the channel. You don't have to watch it, but we watch things to continue to feed it. And then after we're fed and we're full, we go out into the world and we shit it out. We regurgitate the things that we've heard. We act it out. We say it out. We think it out. That's why division is a weapon that's used against humanity to divide us so it can be easily conquered. And what Myron Gaines is doing, he's so angry that he sticks the knife deep into the most painful part of our bodies, to get that reaction, to wake us the F up, to say, hey man, let's stop this racial stuff, man, and let these things distort our thinking. Let's look at things objectively. So again, that's just my spiel. I think the guy is awesome. I really do. I don't have anything against what he does. As a matter of fact, he said it. He says that a lot of you guys think like me, you're just not bold enough to say it, but I am. And I think that it's true. The way that he thinks, and I didn't grow up, a lot of people who grew up Nigerian, there are people who grow up where their parents tell them, don't be like these people, meaning like the black people, even though we all have the same skin color, but there was still an emphasis of inserting a distinction between us and them in terms of the way they act. Though on the outside we may look the same for the most part, there's certain phenotypes, certain genetic makeups that you can tell. You can look at a Nigerian, you can look at an African, and look at an African American, you can kind of tell the difference because of certain, maybe the nose shape, the lip shape, the head shape, whatever it is. And I would hear parents tell their children, don't be like these people. Don't be like these people. But I didn't grow up in a household like that. I didn't because my younger brother and my older sister, they believe in that narrative of racism. They believe in the narrative of the systemic racism stuff, the white man's keeping you down kind of stuff. Like they believe in that. And even though my brother, he has a doctorate degree, he's a physical therapist. I'm in education. My sister's in education. We're well to do. So if this country, if this system keeps the black man down, how did we come here from Nigeria and are doing relatively well. Nothing kept us down. Nothing kept my mom down when she came down here. She went to nursing school and became a nurse. I think people come here, you have to work hard, bust your ass, and do what you need to do. If you think that there's a system that's keeping you down, then you're going to stay down. It's as simple as that. The reason why a lot of African Americans are in the state they're in, it has nothing to do with anything that's on the outside. There's nothing that's external. They've built up their culture to be toxic because they believe themselves to be toxic. They've drank the victimhood juice, which keeps you, for the most part, most of us, which keeps them down. How can you, if you already think that you're at a deficit, why work hard? And then if you do think you are at a deficit, they say, oh, as a black person, you gotta overachieve to get to where a white person is. Well, what happens when you overexert yourself and you don't get what you want? Then what that does, it incurs anger to build up inside of you because you think that the system was unfair to you because you gave extra effort than everybody else and the white person got the job instead of you. But if you never had that victimhood mentality to begin with, you would just give your best effort and let the chips land where they may. But see, when you have the background, when you have the backdrop of racial contention, racial division, and racial overtones as a overarching theme that guides your life, then it's going to be very, very difficult not to be angered by the things that are happening to you. Rather than taking the mishaps of your life and say, you know what, maybe I can do this differently next time. Maybe I didn't get the job because this happened. Maybe because I did this or I did that. Maybe I need to do this better. It doesn't cause you to go back to the drawing table and refine certain things. It doesn't cause for you to reflect. It just causes you to point fingers at people and point fingers at our system. So what this victimhood mentality does, in my opinion, and I agree with Myron, it sort of relieves people from the responsibility and the accountability of actually working hard. And you end up being almost, a lot of black people, I hear them say things like, oh, these white people are so entitled. I think that the most entitled people are black people. Now you may say, how is that? We don't get anything, but we think we deserve certain things. And I think that's why we have the kind of mentality that we have. Self-entitled people, the only response that self-entitled people have when they don't get what they think that they want is to play the victim card. Because if you think that you deserve something and you don't get it, then you become a victim. Because you're taking something away from me that I deserve. I'm entitled to this. I'm entitled to that. So when I look at the whole scope of what's going on, I see what Myron Gaines is doing. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't even bother me if Myron Gaines was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy saying the word nigger. Like that word doesn't do anything to me. I've never given it power, folks. There are people, if you call them the N-word, they're going to lose it. I'm talking about the N-word, like not like the way people use it as a term of endearment. I'm talking about like the way with the hard ER, nigger. It's a word. And to be honest with you guys, there are people that look like me that have that type of attitude. I think being a igger, I'm gonna be careful not to keep using that word because I'm on YouTube here, but that N-word, it means a lot to me. It's that N-word is a certain type of people, a certain type of behavior, and a certain type of attitude, and it's not just limited to just black people. I think that there are white N-words out there, and there are white Mexicans out. I mean, there are N-word Mexicans out there too. I think I've taken that term and applied it to everything. It's a behavior. And the number one attitude or the number one trait of a N-word with the ER, with the igger, that kind of N-word is ignorance. Is using, especially for men, basing your actions off of emotions, not thinking, impulsive, laziness, lacking self-awareness, and having a victimhood mentality. All those things that I've said, I'm probably missing out on a couple of more adjectives there, but all those things that I just stated are the definition of an N-word to me. But unfortunately, a lot of black people fall into that category because black people, they encompass all those entailments. They fit all those boxes. If you check the majority of those boxes that I just mentioned, then you're an N-word. If you're lazy, if you carry a victimhood mentality, if you lack self-awareness, right? If you don't know how to read the room, if you don't apply logic to every situation, if you lack critical thinking skills. If you are impulsive, if you're always angry all the time because you think that there's some kind of force out there that's against you, if you feel like you're entitled to certain things, those are N-words to me. Those are Iggers. And you say, well, those things aren't so bad. Yeah, they're not so bad on face value on the surface, but because if you harbor those sort of sentiments and you hold those dear to your heart, it produces a certain type of action. What you think produces a certain type of action. It produces a certain type of behavior. And that behavior that it produces is called Igger behavior, the N-word behavior. And it's not limited to just black people. But unfortunately, more black people fall into that category. That's an Igger to me. That's an N-word to me. Using drugs. They use drugs. That could be a category too. They use drugs for coping with reality because they can't deal with reality. They're crooks. They're thieves. Anybody can fall into that category. But if you fit all those boxes, you're an N-word. You're an N-word. You know? I look at the N-word as a word that's analogous and synonymous, you know, with idiocy, with you being a moron, an idiot, an imbecile, a degenerate. Yeah. So I'm going to leave it there, folks. Leave a comment, man. Tell me what you guys think. Again, Myron Gaines, man. Listen to his channel. Love him or hate him. Doesn't matter. The guy is speaking facts. And even this stuff that he talks about when he talks about relationships and women, in terms of the modern dating climate, the way the climate of dating is right now, the environment that we're in, I'm glad I'm married, man. I wouldn't want to be trying to date nowadays. Good luck. You know, good luck. But that's my take. Leave a comment, tell me what you guys think. Peace out. Until next time.